Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Worship Leader Conversations. I hope you've been enjoying this second series. I hope you're enjoying all of the episodes that we've been putting out. Andrew, Pastor Andrew White, great to see you. Thank you for joining. Aki, great to see you too. Thank you for joining. And Zach, hi Zach, thank you for joining. I'm going to wave to all of you. It's good to see you. Jay, thanks for joining. I will get you in just a moment. I'm just going to do this little bit of introduction and then we'll get going. But thank you everyone for joining. I really do hope that you've been enjoying these conversations that we've been having, whether you're watching us with us live here on a Tuesday night, or I put out a question, that was a very short questionnaire on Instagram a couple of days ago, and it seems like quite a few people are actually watching this on catch up on IGTV, which is great. And that's the beauty of doing something like this, is that although some people are going to be watching live, a lot of people are actually going to be catching up on this afterwards, and that's really great. I'm glad that you're watching this. I'm glad that you're catching up wherever it is, whether it's on IGTV or on YouTube or on Facebook. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being part of this journey, being part of these conversations. It is really great to have you. And we've been having some great conversations. We've had some the privilege to meet so many new people, new worship leaders, people that I've never met before. It's been such a privilege. Hi Jay, we spoke to Jay last week. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you. 2 Jays with us this evening. Rose, thank you for joining. And don't forget, say hello in the comments down below. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us a wave. And also feel free to ask questions. And if you're watching this on catch up, you can still ask questions. Just send me a message or drop a comment in the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments or something. But if you've got a question, ask it, and I'll get back to whoever it is that I've been chatting to, and I'll ask them that question, and we'll keep this conversation going. But thank you for joining us. So tonight, hi Mum, I'm gonna. Oh, it doesn't come up with the thing. Thank you for joining us. So tonight we are going to be chatting with Jay Cook, who is a worship leader in the great city of Bath, one of our favourite cities. Well, it's just outside of Bath. We'll get to that in a minute. But Bath is just a beautiful city. Jay Akins, if you're watching, Bath. If you're going to come to the UK, you have to go to Bath. It's one of the few cities that you do have to go to. Paul, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So, just first of all, before we get going, like I said, you can catch up with all of these on IGTV, on YouTube, or on my Instagram page, or Facebook, or wherever you are. But click on the link in my bio, and that will take you to YouTube to see all the videos there. I am still working on trying to get these turned into podcasts. Hopefully do that very soon. Yeah, I can't wait to visit Jay. Come on over. Bring your whole family. I don't know if you're allowed to do that these days. Travel restrictions, I don't know. But come. But also, it would be great if you can share these out. Just, if you know worship leaders, whether they're part of a big church or a small church, whether they're part of a contemporary church or traditional church, it doesn't matter. If you know some worship leaders, just share this stuff with them. Share these conversations with them, because there's so much that we've been getting in these conversations. There's been so much coming out. Really good stuff that will bless anyone who's in worship leadership, who's leading a team or is leading worship in their church. There's so much good stuff in these conversations. From all the people that I've been talking to, it's been such a pleasure and a privilege to hear their stories. So share these out. If you know someone who's leading worship, share these, bless them with them. Encourage them to listen, encourage them to watch on a Tuesday night or to catch up on IGTV. And if you know someone who is a worship leader who has a good story to tell, or even an okay story to tell, I don't mind. It's just a story. It's all about story, isn't it? We learn from people's stories. So if you know a worship leader who has a story to share, then let me know, or get them to get in contact with me so that I can get them here on Instagram Live, and we can find out their story. It'd be such a privilege and a pleasure to hear from them and give them the opportunity to share their story and learn from them. All right. Okay. So here we go. Let's bring in Jay. Don't forget, if you want to ask Jay a question, just Jay. There we go. Just use and I will drop Hi from Turkey. Thank you for joining us. It's so great that you keep coming back each week. I love it. Thank you. Hey, Jay. So
Hey, mate.
had two different conversations at the same time. It's great.
How
Sorry
you
about that.
doing?
Yes. Proper introduction. Jay Cook, welcome. Thank you for joining me on Instagram Live.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh, a
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you. Well, okay, I'm going to get to finding out a little bit about you in a minute.
Hmm.
Um, bear with me a moment. Just need to take a drink.
No worries, go for it. I've got
Your
a
voice,
massive challenge here, mate.
yeah, it's
I'm not
glad that
even sporty.
your voice gets so dry doing this.
Yeah,
I
I
just,
can imagine.
I'm not used to doing all this talking, all the time. I'm quite a quiet person normally.
That's
All right,
awesome.
so everyone, this is Jay Cook. He is a worship leader at St Philip's Church. Is that right?
That's the
In
one, yeah.
just outside Bath. Why don't you tell us, Jay, a little bit about your church and about your team, and kind of give us an introduction to how you got into leading worship and leading a worship team.
Okay, great. Yeah, yeah. So, as you said, my church that I work for is called St Philip's. It's in a little, I don't even know if it's a town or a village.
Okay.
It's just outside of the centre of Bath, maybe like
Yeah.
5 minute drive from the centre of Bath,
Okay.
in a little town village called Odddown. Just along one of the main stretches of road there. Um, Funny
That's a
enough,
great. It's a great English countryside village name, isn't it?
absolutely, yeah, Odd Down, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Only odd people come from Odd Down. Um, but yeah, it's been. I actually grew up at the church and have,
Yeah.
strangely enough, there's been a whole journey that I've returned to the church within the last couple of years. But just a little bit about the team. We've got a really faithful, lovely team of worshippers at the church. We've got about 20, 25 people in our team, so we're
Fantastic.
quite really lovely, great
Yeah.
musicians. Basically the whole worship team were the people that kind of taught me to lead worship. My
Yeah.
mum used to run the team when I was younger,
Wow.
um, and
That's
then
a legacy.
yeah, and then we left the church for a while, and the whole kind of story. We were at the church for a while, and I grew up drumming. So drumming
Yeah.
is kind of my main thing when I was growing up, and still probably is the main thing. And at the age of 11, I was allowed to start kind of playing in church. So my dad was the drummer of the church, and another guy called Scott Joyce was also a drummer at the church. And I was just mesmerised by their playing, and I was like, oh, I really want to do that.
Yeah.
So I spent loads of time like learning how to drum and stuff like that with them, and they poured a lot of time into me. And at about the age of 14, I kind of got thrown into this life of like secular music touring. Kind of started touring at the age of 14 and kind of did that all the way up
Wow.
until about the age of 20. Just kind of playing and touring in different bands and stuff. And then God did this kind of crazy thing, as he always does, taking me. I was basically, it was about 2 weeks ahead of a UK tour. There's a whole story that goes with it that's going to be tough to kind of put into a short period of time.
Sure.
There was a letter that was given to me whilst I was at. We basically moved from St Philip's, then moved into a church called Vineyard in Bath, where I met loads of amazing people. And there's this whole kind of like stage of things when we moved there, from a chap called Sam giving me this note which had this kind of prophecy about worship on it,
Yeah.
to then a few years after that, I was just kind of like, I had that in the back of my mind. I was, oh, I know God's kind of calling me into this. But I went away to Thailand for a week or so, just for a little holiday with a friend.
Yeah.
And on the way back, it was about 30 hours of delayed flights and stuff, as you can probably imagine. Horrible. And
Awful.
so I was so late to getting back on the plane. And I was on the last train back from London to get to Bath. Called up my dad and was like, Dad, I'm about an hour away. He was like, oh great, well mum's gonna go to church, because it was the evening service at the church that evening, and I'll take you home. And I was like, great, yeah, logistics all sorted. Then God like just hit me whilst I was on the train. He was like, no, I want you to go to church tonight. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, why not? So kind of picked up the phone again and was like, Dad, I think I'm going to go to church. So I went, and within about 5 minutes of walking into the church, a woman called Suze prophesied over me literally as I walked into the church, and was
Wow.
like, I feel like God is speaking into your life. Well, just to run back slightly, throughout the whole week at Thailand, I was like praying with God, and God kept speaking to me about giving up all of the secular music stuff to pursue a
Yeah.
ministry and worship. Literally walk into this church, 5 minutes in, get prophesied over for it. And then there was a worship leader down from Trent Vineyard, who probably about 20 minutes after that, was leading worship, just dropped down into this really beautiful kind of dipped down bit of worship and said, I really feel like someone has walked into the room tonight that has been told by God to give something up in order to pursue ministry. And, you know, that was quite broad, but I was like, Spirit hit me, and I was like, wow, that's me. Like,
you're getting
100%.
the feeling God is saying something very clearly here.
Yeah, man. It blew me away. And then, it was about 2 weeks ahead of there was a little bit of time, and then 2 weeks ahead of a UK tour with my friend Danny McMahon. I was sat in a rehearsal, and God just went, now is the time that you've got to give this up. And we were literally in the process of having a conversation about logistical cars, who was going to drive where, what van we're going to take. And I just went, guys, I can't come with you. I'm so sorry. And then kind of explained why, expecting these guys to be like, you know, what on earth do you think you're doing? But they were just like, that's amazing, mate. You go and do what? Because they're a secular band, not Christian. And they were just like, mate, we understand. If that's your heart thing, then go for it. And found them drummers, thankfully. And then just a whole journey from then. I could go on for hours about God was so crazy and faithful in the journey. Ended up spending a year at HDB in London, training as a worship leader. And then bumped into a guy called Paul Ferguson there, who I really just got on really well with. Went back to, so a friend of mine got cancer, unfortunately, and I went back to Bath to see him when he called me. And we went back into St. Philip's, which I haven't been in for 5 years. And they, like, someone when I was in there said, oh, we're getting a new vicar this weekend. I was like, oh, amazing. Basically skipped forward, and that weekend I got a phone call from my friend Dave from St. Philip's. He's like, do you know Paul Ferguson? And I was like, yeah, man, yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's like, he's going to be our new vicar.
Wow.
I was like, no. One thing led to another, and I ended up returning back to St. Philip's with Paul as on a ministry scheme thing, as helping out on the worship team, and then eventually being inducted as their worship leader.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's a long story, mate.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's amazing. People's journeys are so different, but you can always tell that when listening to you and listening to other people, you can hear how God has directed people, and whether they've been listening to him or not, God has ordered people's steps to bring them to where they are now. And it's amazing to hear your story and to hear how God has brought you to where you are. So is St. Philip's a HTB network church?
It's not actually, no.
It's not? Okay.
Yeah. I think they were thinking of planting in Bath at some point, but I don't really know. I don't know the backgrounds of stuff, but or the inner workings. But no, it was just Paul was called, just really called to Bath. There's a whole incredible story of his story. Definitely God worked.
Who wouldn't be? I mean, Bath.
It's pretty stunning.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Funnily enough, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell his testimony, but I'll tell a little bit. He was somewhere at a train station praying to God whether or not he should be in that place to do ministry. He tripped up on a step, fell into a sign, and it said, "Come to Bath." And he was like, "Oh my gosh!" And then, like, his story is incredible. Just hit with the Spirit. It's like, okay, God, that's where you're taking me. So,
fantastic. That's amazing. It's amazing how God speaks and leads us. It's so different for each one of us, but it's so clear often, isn't it? Fantastic.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, so let's tell me then about your team. I mean, you said a little bit. Does your team have a vision? The worship team particularly. How does it operate? Before lockdown, what did your team's weekly activities look like?
Yeah, sure. In terms of like vision, we kind of did a big revamp of the vision statement of the church when I rejoined and when Paul came along. And our vision statement for the church is to pursue God until heaven overflows through us. Yeah. So it's about the pursuit of heaven, and then out of that overflow, God doing his works in the church, in Odd Down, in Bath, and out into the world. And I think that's kind of our main vision as well. That we kind of put everything through that. Everything we do goes through that. Yeah. That vision statement. Is this in pursuit of God? Is this in pursuit of the presence? So we kind of try and do that. So even in the simplicity of before doing a worship service, we'll spend the time, we'll finish practice at least 10-15 minutes earlier than we usually would before kind of doing this, and spend 10-15 minutes just in worship and praise with the whole ministry team. So Paul the vicar comes up, whoever's doing the doors that day, whoever's on worship team, we all come together and we worship and we pursue him before
Fantastic.
we do anything in service. So that's a big thing in the worship team and all teams throughout the church, is to pursue him first, and then through that encounter, then overflow into
That's great.
yeah. So that would be kind of our main thing, and that can then also come into like vision nights and worship nights and team nights and stuff like that, which we've done a couple of, which have been a really nice sort of switch up. I know they did a lot of them before I got there, but just like kind of seeing how that changes, seeing how we pursue God in those times, and having different speakers and stuff come in to kind of speak into that sort of area of vision and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Do you, being so close to Bath, do you, although you're in like a kind of like a village outside, or a small town outside, do you still feel connected to the city? And do you feel that, like if you're a church in the city, you tend to draw large congregations and you get all sorts of people coming. Do you kind of get some of the overflow of that, people from the city coming out to where you are, or is it mainly just kind of like the rural area that you're in that you're drawing people from?
Sure. I think that I think we're close enough to, because we're kind of like the closest town before you come out of town sort of thing.
Yeah.
Closest village before you come out of the city centre, sorry. So we do get a lot of connection with people in the city centre, especially churches in the city centre. There's a lot of incredible people in Bath that are putting together like prayer nights, and I think there's a thing called prayer for Bath, where all the kind of different churches come together. I've got a friend called Andy Williams as well, who connects a group of people. He's the one that I connected through with all the worship leaders in Bath. We sometimes get together and have like a coffee, chat about what's going on.
Good.
In terms of leadership, that's really useful and really, really such a blessing. And we do have people coming up from town. I call it town. That's what from the city. Just going downtown sort of thing. But from the city centre, and we try and stay connected. And we had this vision right at the beginning of God having like there's like a well in the church of life and of His Spirit, that kind of the whole overflow things. I can't remember who had the picture, but there was this kind of like explosion of water that came out of the floor, out of this well that had been digging deeper and deeper and deeper through the faithfulness of the church over many years. And we just saw this exploding, and then just because we're at the top of the hill, and the city is like down in the valley. We saw this water just trickling down and just flowing down like a river into the center of town, and like everyone coming together into this kind of like pool of water. It was kind of all being together in the Spirit, and not being separate churches, it all being just one church together in Bath. They're separate ministries and stuff like that, but all kind of like in the Spirit.
Awesome. So how long then I think you probably mentioned it, how long have you been the worship pastor or leader of your worship team?
Officially, actually, only the last few months as officially the worship. So I think my title is worship and creative director. I think that's the title at the moment. But I've been at the church serving in that role for the past year as well. Just under a diocese thing instead of specifically employed by the church. So what have been then the biggest challenges that you faced? And I can imagine some of the challenges coming into a already established team to take that on as the leader. What have been some of the challenges that particularly you yourself have faced, and how have you overcome those challenges? Sure. I think the initial challenge for me was because I grew up there, and because everyone there were people that taught me. This was no reflection on them, that they were all just lovely to me and welcoming. But inside of me, I was like, why should I be allowed to say or do anything or direct this in any way? You're the guys that taught me. I have no right to kind of come back and impart my wisdom. But I think just through having conversations with team, with like individual members, and just really realizing that they didn't. I need to stop viewing myself as a child in the church anymore, and begin to be like, actually, no, I'm coming in to help and to serve in the best way, and God has appointed me here to do this. And I'm quite a leader from the back. I like to encourage people into and push people to try and grow into the positions that they want to grow into. So it was a bit weird for me to be like, okay, I'm coming in, let's do this kind of big thing, and then actually my initial response is to step back and be like, you go.
Yeah.
Whereas actually sometimes it's cool to be like, oh, I need to actually step up into a role of leadership, which is very surreal to me. Like the whole leadership thing, which is very well taught at HTP leadership, but I still didn't feel like a leader until people just prophesied and prayed, and almost like it was almost like an instant welcoming in of like, Jay, we're so happy to have you, which was so kind of them and so loving of them. Of each and every person in the church, in team, out of team. So that really allowed me to sit into it a little bit more and be like, oh, okay, maybe we can just do this together. And I don't need to be this kind of like forward pushing leader. I can actually just encourage people and bless people in whatever way God wants me to do that.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a hurdle to overcome to begin with.
Sure. And how about
growing into the man?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And how about now, since lockdown has been happening, and so no in-person meetings, no singing in church. Has your building reopened, and are you doing in-person meetings without singing?
Yeah, we are. Yeah. It's been the last 3 weeks that we've been doing that now, which has been very simple.
So how have you, as a leader, handled lockdown with your team? Sure,
it's been an interesting one. So like in terms of like the weekly look of things. To begin with, we were like, okay, how are we actually going to do this? And I kind of stepped into a role of creating the online content, so actually building the services, editing all the elements. And to begin with, it was just kind of, I just went in, I was like, just to make this easy, I'm just going to play a guitar, sing, chuck it in, do some recordings. And then we were like, actually, this is about team, this is about family, this is about doing this together. So as quickly as we could, we pulled the team together, and we're like, we basically, one person, either me, Dave, or Dan, that's 3 worship leaders at the church, would record a set and film it, and then we send that off to people, to the rest of the team. We'd have like a rota of who's on team, and send it off. They kind of film and record their thing. That would come back in. I'd mix it, and then thankfully Dave is really good at video editing as well, so he'd actually edit the video content of the worship section of things. And we kind of cut that all together, put it all together, and then put that into the service. And it was really surreal to begin with, because it was like when you're worshiping by yourself, I was a bit like, this is odd, like kind of worshiping to a screen. Until the moment where I realised it's like, actually, when I come to lead worship, I've always been taught to always lead out of encounter, so always lead out of the secret place. I was like, actually, this place is actually welcoming people into my secret place, into that place of worship. And then that being like the overflowing entirely out of that. And I thought that was almost like quite a beautiful moment of realization of, actually, this is just what I'm born to do, is to worship God by myself, and then that to be corporate eventually. But to have all that come together, it's almost like everyone was worshiping in their own secret place. And that's the place moment coming together, which I thought was really powerful. And then just moving into when we could slowly open up the church, we started filming the sets completely on stage, social distanced, with fewer musicians. Whereas now we've got even more leniency. We're doing like a small band on a Sunday morning. And leading the church. We'll have some content on the screens, so that we can have like, it kind of pulls together with the online content. So we're doing both services. We're doing an online one and a live one. And then, so some of the online content will come over the screens, whereas the preach is live and the worship is live. But we still, on a Sunday evening, record a live worship set for the next week.
Ready for the next, okay, great.
So we'll record it and bring in the team, almost like having like an evening service. But no one being there.
No one being there and playing it next week.
So if there's any mistakes, we can just like cut it and restart the thing. But I'm sure you know the way.
I know exactly what you mean. I've been doing something quite similar to you in the terms of collecting together contributions from different team members. And I always find, like you say, it's interesting when you send something out and people are sat there in their secret place worshiping and recording it. But then when you put, and and all they're doing is singing along to a guitar and a vocal. There's nothing else. And then when you bring it together and you mix it all together with instruments, with people that recorded all the keys and guitars and stuff, and it sounds like they were actually all singing together and playing together at the same time, as if we were a band. It's amazing. It always amazes me that what pours out of people, and you bring it together digitally on a computer, but yet they just, people flow together so perfectly, and it sounds amazing, and it's great, isn't it? Just people pouring out of their heart, even though they're on their own. Yet when you bring it together, it still sounds like as if they were part of a team when they were doing it. It's amazing, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. Praise God for technology.
Oh yes, yeah, fantastic.
That's really good.
So tell me, is there anything, and maybe you could kind of sort of go back before being involved here, but is there anything that you've done as a team, as a leader of something, that you thought, I really wish I hadn't done that?
Sure.
I was going to say, maybe it's too early in your leadership to have made some really bad mistakes yet. Who knows? But
yeah, I think one major thing that I've kind of learned through being on team, both at St. Philip's, but also at HDB, was the whole thing around burnout.
Yeah,
I'm very good at being a yes man and being like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, no worries, I'll do that. Yeah, no worries, I'll do that. And like really overdo it to the point of like almost making myself sick sometimes.
Yeah.
From the amount of work that I do, sometimes just out of sheer yes man-ness, if that's a word.
It is now.
And yeah, I'll patent that at some point.
Yeah, it's yours.
Yes man-ness. And just finding that burnout is actually, I've been reading this amazing book recently. I don't know where it is. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's so good.
It's great.
I'll remember it in a minute. And it's all about like working out of rest.
Yeah.
Like we shouldn't, in a normal day-to-day life, we shouldn't work for the weekend. We should work from the weekend. We shouldn't work for rest. We should work from rest.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely like let's go, let's keep working, and I'll crash at some point. Whereas actually that kind of revelation of actually, if you work from rest, you actually get more done.
Yeah.
And you're not just kind of like half doing everything. You can actually put your fullness into everything. And I think that's been a real kind of curve for me in terms of just personal leadership, is actually don't overdo it sometimes, because you'll actually end up being bad on your team and not doing things for your team, and messing stuff up, like messing up rotas or not showing up 100% on a Sunday morning to lead people, and that's just not honoring people if you're working half of your capacity all the time because you've overdone it. So that's definitely been a thing. And then just on a silly note, I did the first kind of like team night I did. It was probably a similar sort of thing where I didn't organize it massively well. I hadn't set it out very well, and I had everything set out, but I hadn't like planned how it was actually going to work.
Yeah.
And thankfully it came together kind of, but a lot of people on team, well, all people on team are serving and have other jobs and stuff, like unpaid and stuff like that. So, and all have families and this sort of stuff. And me and my vicar had a chat afterwards, and not in a kind of like you did wrong way, but he was really kind and saying, Jay, how did you honor your team in that, in not preparing well? I was like, you're so right. Like, I need to be stronger on that in the future. Like, I thought I'd organized it because it was all in my head. I was like, yes. And then I filled my week up, did too much in the week, and it came to the time, and I got there about an hour beforehand, and I was like, oh, actually, how's this going to run? Like, I know how it's going to look and how it's going to feel, but how's it going to run? Yeah. And I think God was faithful in it, and as he always is in everything. He really, really spoke through the person that came in to speak. And he really worked through the worship. But in terms of how am I kind of providing an evening for people that could otherwise be spending time with their family on that evening?
Yeah, sure.
I need to be honouring that. And so that's definitely been a learning curve in terms of something that maybe I wish I'd done differently, but definitely something I've learned from.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Going back to that your first point where you're talking about leading out of rest, what is it? What things do you do to find rest? To what do you how have you developed that within your life that you have those times of rest?
Yeah, I think it's being very strict on a day off, like on the Sabbath kind of thing. I know it's spoken very, very fondly of in the Bible, and I think there's a reason for that. It's because you're meant to have a day just to kind of just be like, okay, let's like spend time with God. Let's revive myself, and that can sometimes look like spending time with a friend. Like I'm really blessed to have a couple of friends in the village. I live in Timsbury, and we've just had the pub reopen around the corner, and we can just go around and just an evening with a couple of friends and my little brother can be, and my dad as well. My dad comes out and stuff like that, and it's like actually that even though I'm doing something, it can actually because I'm quite a people person, it can really fill me up. Being able to spend time with friends and family, or other days it might just look like sitting in my room and just watching something that or watching a film or something that really lifts me up. Or just spending a whole day, as cliche as it sounds, just listening to worship music, worshiping God, and just being like, you know what, I'm gonna rest in you today, God. I'm just gonna spend time in your presence, do nothing else but pursue that. And things get distracted throughout the day. You got to go and cook. You got to go and do things. And sometimes a message will come through that you have to quickly sort out. But it's about at least making sure that you're being really vigilant about when you're spending time and being really strict with yourself. Because if you're not strict with yourself, no one else will be. I think.
Sure. That's good.
Because anyone can fill up. Anyone can just be like, "Can you do this?" And you'll be like, "Yeah, no worries. I'll get that right now." Whereas actually, sometimes it's like, "No, I actually need to say no to that," and which I find really hard. I'm just like, I want to help, but it's good to just kind of spend some time just with God or with friends, and with God, definitely 100%. That is the main one, but also spend time doing things you love with people you love. Or as introverts, things that fill you up. Just find the things that fill you up and revive you and give you energy. The things that energize you. And if you do that, then that'll actually give you energy for the rest of the week instead of like just trying to drag yourself like through the week.
That's really good. That's really good. So, what kind of things have you done then? I mean, we kind of briefly hit on this a little bit earlier, but as a team leader, what things have you done that have really brought out good fruit in your team? That have brought took your team to a new level, or brought out a greater degree of strength as a whole team? What kind of things have you done that have been really successful?
Definitely. So as I say, I got quite early into it. So in terms of actually leading stuff, it's been quite a short period of time. But I think for me the main thing is just loving your team. I think that's really important. Because you can do all the practical stuff is so important. Worship team nights, and I think making sure things are really structured well, and making sure that you've got a plan and that you're doing things towards something and working towards a certain point. But I think first and foremost, like we were taught to love our neighbor, love our friends, love the Lord God with all our heart, and love your neighbor, love your friend, whatever. I don't know what the actual verse is. I'm not great at quoting, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think if you love people right, and if you really just honor them and bless your team, that there will actually be more of a response from your team, and not loving them and blessing them and honoring them because you want a good response out of them, doing it because you want to love them and you want to bless them and you want to honor them. And then through that, I think team will then be more likely to want to do things because it's a family. It's not, oh yes, I'll do that for you because you told me to do that. It's, I love you so much and you love me that we'll do this together and we'll help each other. I think that's been definitely a learning curve for me in terms of leadership, is just loving your team. And if you start in that place, then the rest of the things, rotas and worship nights and practice nights and stuff like that will flow out of a really pure and honourable place. That's so really just forcing people to do things because you want them to do it right, stuff like that.
Yes. Well, that's really good. That's really good. So in your time, like you can go right the way back from when you were first at St Philip's for this one. But is there anything that anyone has said to you, some word of encouragement, not necessarily prophetic, but just some advice or a word of encouragement that someone has given to you that has really stuck with you and has almost kind of formed your leadership and how you lead people?
Definitely. I think I might have touched on it earlier a little bit, but that always leading from a place of encounter, because the secret place is essential. I've heard it a little bit before. That is basically the first thing me and my vicar spoke about when we started kind of doing ministry together. And I'm a massive fan of Jeremy Real, and he very much speaks on that. I was at the week in Birmingham. Have you ever been to the week in Birmingham?
I haven't, no. I know a few people that have been to it. I know they've been really blessed by it, yeah.
Definitely recommend it. It's brilliant. And we were really blessed to have Jeremy come and do a talk and worship. And that was basically his whole thing. He was speaking about purity, honor, and leading out of the secret place.
Yeah.
And that just completely blew my mind. I was like, because I feel like coming from a secular music performance background, even though I throughout the whole time I still led in church. Well, I didn't really lead in church. I'm more drummed in church. Yeah. Then worship leading has become more of a more recent thing. But I feel like coming out of that background of secular music and striving, I feel like I've got quite a striving spirit in that, because that's kind of the way that kind of, and I say this a lot. I'm definitely not knocking it, because I love secular music. I love everyone in it. I've got so many friends that are in the secular music world that I love to bit. It's just, for me personally, I can find myself striving a lot in that situation, going out on stage and looking for affirmation. Yeah. Whereas for worship leading, it's completely like the opposite. Yeah. It's about, it's all about him. It's all about God, and all about blessing his heart and basically the audience of one, just blessing his heart and lifting up in worship. And I feel like if I step out on stage or onto the platform, I hate calling it a stage because it kind of sounds like a performance. Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah. You can use whatever. It is what it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. But I feel like if I step out onto the platform, onto the stage to lead worship, and I haven't first pursued him, then I'm kind of first leading out of the flesh in that moment. I know God can use people throughout anything, but also another bit like tags onto that, onto the worshiping from the secret place, is that I was always told that if you can't lead people to a place you haven't been yourself, you can't lead people into an encounter that you haven't had yourself. So if you're trying to lead people into the throne room of God without entering the throne room yourself, it's going to be a lot harder to pull that perspective and to lead people into that place. So that's definitely been a huge bit of advice that's completely flipped my mindset of leading worship, is first pursue him in the secret place, and then be filled by the Spirit in that place, find encounter with God, and then out of that place lead people in worship. Yeah. Not that God wouldn't use you if you didn't, but I think it's more that God really honors that and wants, and also I think he just wants to spend time with you as well. You can get really caught up in ministry. Yeah. Constantly like, oh, I need to do this set right, I need to do that set right, I need to think about this a lot. Whereas actually God's sometimes just like, my child, like, come back to me. I want to spend time with you. I want to speak to you. I want to bless you. I want to love you. And I think sometimes definitely in ministry that can be forgotten in the kind of business of the week. Yeah, sure. I know what you mean. Yeah. No, that's really good. So you've just released, if I'm not mistaken, an album. Is that right? Of self-penned songs? Just a single at the moment. Oh, just a single. Okay. So tell us about that. So tell us about your single, and tell us how the whole recording process has been going for you. Great. Okay. Yeah. It's it's called Like a Child. And it came out last Friday, and it's been an interesting one. The song actually came to me on a bus whilst I was coming back from work one day, and I saw this woman holding this child, like, just in her arms. Yeah. And just, I don't know what happened. I had this kind of like heaven experience where, like, God just really powerfully spoke to me through this imagery of this woman holding a child, and was like, do you realize that everyone was a child once? Yeah. I know it sounds really simple, but I was like, wow, yeah, that's cool. And he was like, every homeless person, every person in addiction, every person that's struggling, every person that's in a good place, every person in this world is was a child once.
Yeah.
And that's actually how I see you. I see you as my beloved child. And I love you. And then that kind of he flipped it into, like, as I pursued that more, and was like, God, what does this mean? And he was like, he really spoke into the prodigal son story, which I think sometimes can lose its gravity because it's such a well-known story. But actually just the power of what Jesus was saying in that parable of, it doesn't matter how far you run from me. It doesn't matter where you go. When you come running back to me, the Father will be with open arms, ready to welcome you in. And they spent a little bit of time with it kind of being a certain structure, like the lyrics in the old chorus were just like, I'll run to the arms of the Father. I want to know your embrace, which has now been unintentionally stolen by, what's his name? I run to the Father, fall into grace. Have you heard that song?
I can't place it. No.
I've forgotten his name. Gone out of my head. I'll remember it in a minute. But I had this kind of whole thing of running to the Father. Yeah. And on my year in HTB, I also did the Worship Central year as a add-on to that. And I was actually really blessed to have one of my heroes in Nick Herbert be my kind of mentor. And he was like, just send some songs and we'll chat about it. And I sent him the song, and he was like, yeah, great, really good. And then I got to kind of do a little kind of run through of it in front of, all the people on the year and a little panel of worship leader judges. And they were like, great kind of lyrical content, but where's your chorus going? Like what you're actually trying to say. And I sat just on a Skype call to Nick one day, and he said, what I want you to do is I want you to step away from the guitar, step away from the song, and just sing out what you think the song's about. Just sing it. And I was walking around this church called Queensgate, just walking around. It's like, what is it? What is it about? What is that about the child thing that really hit me? And God just placed the words on my heart about hope and resting. And I was just like, wow. And this chorus just came out in the moment. Pretty much, it sounds surreal and completely cliche, as all my things do. But a lot of the time for me when writing songs, I can't just sit down and write a song. Cody Carnes, there we go. Cody Carnes.
Jay's got song. It
there. Thanks, Jay. Day up and day out. And I can't really always sit down and write songs, but God always seems to just place words in my head that I wouldn't even think of. I've had loads of songs come from dreams. I'll just wake up and God will speak to me in a dream. In this moment, it was just that kind of prompting of what is this song about, and then God just instantly spoke to me this chorus about hope and about resting His presence. And I was just like, wow. And then just kind of taking that from the prodigal son and then into this just kind of anthem of hope, which is crazy. And so I got really excited about it and finished it off. And then with my friend Andrea, who is actually the guitarist in one of the secular bands I used to tour in. He ran this incredible studio in Bristol called Puzzle Maker Studios. And I was just like, mate, I'd quite like to record it with you. He was like, that'd be great. And we just spent ages it was over quite a few months. We've probably been recording it for about a year, just on and off between projects and stuff. And then he was just he's just incredible. He just made this incredible production around it and stuff like that we worked on together with my friend Danny, and then a few other musicians, like my brother got involved, and then my friend James Otto played some synths and keys on it as well. And we just kind of created this song that is now surreally being released out of nowhere. And it was kind of quite a vulnerable song for me, because I quite often find myself in that place of, God, I feel like I've unintentionally been running away from you for a while, and but now I know that you're faithful. I know my hope is in you. I know that I can come back to you and you'll always be there. And I think the bridge choruses, the bridge lyrics or the pre-chorus lyrics, you found me down in the dust and you held me when I was lost, and you love me no matter how far I run.
Fantastic.
And I was like, that is just basically the testimony of my life. It doesn't matter how far away I run from you, God, you're always going to be there. Pick me up out of the dirt, out of the dust, and just be like, still love you. Like, let's go.
Fantastic. And so where can we hear the song? Is it on YouTube, I imagine?
I think it's somewhere on you. There is a link for it on YouTube, but it's on the iTunes and Spotify.
On iTunes and Spotify as well. So if we search for is it J. Elliott Cook Music? Yeah,
J. Elliott Cook, and then Like a Child.
Yeah. Fantastic. We'll check that out.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Jay, for sharing your time with me this evening. It's been fascinating hearing your story. Before we go, I've got one final question, and that is just, are there any books that you've just been reading recently or any podcasts that you've been listening to that you would recommend to other worship leaders?
Sure. It's not one that I've been reading recently, but it's one that basically one Christmas my mum bought for me when I first started feeling like God was leading me into worship ministry. And he's not often known for his writing, but you know Matt Redman?
Yeah.
Well, do you know Matt Redman? Everyone knows. Yeah, some guy.
Wrote a couple of songs, I think,
Yeah. And there was this book, The Unquenchable Worshipper, which I literally just had my head in every 5 seconds I could. And this little excerpt, which completely changed my perspective of everything, was have you heard of Fanny Crosby?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Prolific songwriter,
incredible. And there's this, obviously she's blind, and there's this little excerpt, and it says, and this contented worshipper went on to write around 8,000 hymns of praise. Those 1,000 songs were simply the result of the fire that burned in her heart for Jesus and could not be put out. Someone once asked her, Fanny, do you wish that you had not been blinded? She replied in a typical style, well, the good thing about being blind is that the very first face that I will see is the face of Jesus. And I was like, wow. If that's the perspective of someone that's impaired in that way, and could literally be like, blindness has destroyed my life, for her to be like such a prolific worship leader, and that to be her heart for worship, of like, I just can't wait to see Jesus's face. I don't care about seeing anything else. And I'm like, wow, like, and that literally just that kick started just whole not to be a pun on words, but my heart for worship on a Matt Redman scale. Like, wow, if that's it literally, just completely spun my head into it. So I definitely recommend that. It's got loads of just things about what it means to be a worship leader, just from the simplest forms and just from the simplest heart. And it just completely, spun my head out of control.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jay, for sharing, like I said, your evening with me here. It's been fascinating. I've loved to hear your journey and the way that God is leading you in this. And I realize that you're at you're near the start of this kind of really team leadership kind of journey for you. But it's great to hear what God has done for you already in that time, even through lockdown. It's a privilege to be able to share it here on Instagram. So thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And let's stay in touch. So don't forget, if you're watching or you're watching on Catch Up, you can check out Jay's music at J Elliott Music on iTunes, on Spotify, or YouTube as well, I think. And if you search him on Facebook, I keep seeing your stuff popping up there as well. So you can find him and listen to his new song. Thank you, Jay. It's been a pleasure to chat to you. And,
you too, mate.
And we'll keep in contact, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was Jay Cook. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you got some stuff out of that, Jay's journey. There's so much to learn, I think. Next week, I'm going to be chatting with Phil Le Cheminot, who is a French name. I think that's the way you pronounce it. He did try to tell me, and it's Phil Le Cheminot. But he is a worship leader in a church on the island of Jersey, which, if you don't know the UK at all, Jersey kind of sits with Guernsey, halfway between England and France. And so it's if you remember the TV series Bergerac, that was set on Jersey. If you've never heard of Bergerac, you should check it out because it's a brilliant police show. John Nettles is fantastic, but I'm getting way off track here. So next week, I'm going to be joined by Phil the Sheminat. If you know a worship leader who wants to share their story, their journey, please get in contact with me. Let me know. I would love to chat with them here on Instagram Live. Thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope to see you again here next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.